This is your one and only 𝐈𝐸𝐸81 with your daily dose of video goodness, and today we're talking about the strongest spells in 𝐕-Rising. Let's get to it. So I've seen a ton of talk in the 𝐕-Rising community of people claiming that Chaos Volley is too strong of a spell and it needs nerfed. People are practically begging for it on Reddit. And that got me wondering, is it really overtuned? Does it need a nerf? So I set out to find the damage of every spell and every ultimate in the game because I figured we're doing the regular spells, might as well do the ultimates and see which ones of those are super strong. And sure, we can just go through and look at the tooltips and read the tooltips, do a little math and make an assumption. But tooltips can sometimes be misleading, especially in early access games where the developers may make a tweak and a patch and forget to change the data on the tooltip. On top of that, this game, it's also a little bit more misleading because a lot of the damage that you do depends on your gear level. If you are attacking something that is a much higher level than you, then that tooltip is not quite accurate because yes, you will be doing 200% damage or 50% of your spell power is damage to whatever you're attacking, but then there is other math that is done in there behind the scenes when you're hitting a target that is higher level or lower level than you, and the tooltip does not cover that. So I devised a test. I maxed out my spell power with as high as I could possibly figure out how to get it with all items that are obtainable in game without spawning anything in admin. So there's a whole host of different things that are either left over in the game from development or things that are possible future content that you can spawn in with the admin panel. But since you can't get any of that currently in the game, that would screw with our test. So I used only things that were obtainable within the current game, basically what is now the max level you can possibly get. Then I needed a target, and I needed a target that was going to be a constant. I couldn't just go about attacking any old thing on the screen, so I chose the behemoth boss because this is a very end game boss. It's also really easy to reset the boss by running out of its arena, and I didn't have to deal with any nonsense like being in an area that deals holy damage to you. And in some of these clips, you will notice that I'm using the general Soul Reaper and not an in-game Sanguine weapon to boost my gear level. That is because if you look at the difference between your spell damage, the General's Reaper actually boosts your spell power, and this actually does equate to more damage even though your gear level is slightly lower. However, do know that your gear level does definitely affect the amount of damage that your spells can do. If you drop your gear level too low and you try to attack something that is a skull with a spell, you will see very little damage get through to that creature. But from what I can tell, it looks like if the creature's health bar does show up yellow, that means that it is an equivalent level to you or equal to your level and you do 100% damage. If it shows up brown, you do more than 100% damage, and if it shows up red, you do less than 100% damage. I don't know exactly how much in which of either of those directions, but I can confirm that yellow is 100% damage. And that is because my spell power is at 81.8, and if I attack this target specifically with a spell that deals 100% of my spell power, it deals 82 damage because the game rounds up from that 0.8 to a straight 82 damage, meaning that I am doing 100% of my current spell power. So with all this in place, I know that I'm going to get accurate representation of the actual damage that we're doing to the target. At this point, I went through and hit the target with each of the spells, sometimes more than once, because I wanted to make sure that I was doing the calculations properly without counting crit damage, because I do crit often. Then I took all of those recordings, put them into my editing software, and at times went frame by frame and counted up all the damage for all of the spells. And so for all of those of you who are wondering, is Chaos Volley overtuned? It is and it isn't. So if you only hit with one of the Chaos Volley bolts, then you're only doing 102 damage with that bolt, and then they are going to burn for 56 damage. All of the Chaos spells burn for the same amount every time. It doesn't matter which one of them you are using. So Aftershock applies a burn, Chaos Volley applies a burn, Void applies a burn, and Chaos Barrage also applies a burn. Merciless Charge does not. And all of those spells that apply a burn tick for the same amount and tick for the same amount of time, which in this case was 8 damage 7 times. And something else that is also important to point out that I noticed is that you cannot refresh that burn. So once that debuff is applied to them, it has to completely finish before it can be applied to them again. This means that when you hit something with a Chaos Volley, you are only dealing 102 damage per bolt. So if you hit them with both bolts, then you are dealing 204 damage plus the 56 damage that comes from the burn. You're not refreshing that burn at any point mid-bolt. And the same thing applies to Chaos Barrage as well. It hits them with multiple bolts, but not a single one of those increases the time that they burn for. Once they are hit by that first bolt, that starts the tick down and it will burn for 56 damage. So that means if you only hit the target with one Chaos Volley, they're only taking 158 damage. In that sense, it's not overtuned at all. Things like Shadow Bolt will hit them for a lot more damage in a single bolt. However, if you hit the target with both of the Chaos Volley bolts, then yes, it is overtuned and does significantly more damage than any other normal spell, coming in at 260 damage. That is 102 damage per bolt, totaling to 204 damage, plus the 56 damage from the Chaos Burn. And we'll get into how that compares to all of the other spells here in just a second. I will show you a spreadsheet breakdown and we will go over it. But first, I want to talk about your top 4 highest damage spells, just normal spells, and then we'll talk about the ults. So coming in at number 1, of course, is Chaos Volley at 260 damage. That is followed by Shadow Bolt, and that is only because Shadow Bolt is a single spell, so you only need to land that one spell in order to deal 164 damage. Next up, we have Void, which is technically higher than Shadow Bolt, but you need to hit with both of your charges. If you hit with both charges, each charge deals 57 damage, totaling up to 114 damage, plus the 56 damage for the burn totals 170 damage. But because you have to land both of those, they are also spots on the ground that the target can walk out of. We're putting that at number 3. At number 4 is Frostbat, and Frostbat deals 82 damage per bat. You get 2 charges, which totals up to be 164 damage if you hit with both bats back to back. So it deals the exact same amount as the Shadow Bolt, however, you need to land both bats. So that is why I put it at number 4. If we are only talking about landing a single bolt, then Shadow Bolt is your highest damage spell, coming in at 164, because Chaos Volley only deals 102 plus the 56 damage for the burn, coming in slightly lower at 158 damage. Moving on to ultimates, let's talk about your top 3 highest damage ultimates. So the first one is Chaos Barrage, and that's only if you land all of the bolts from Chaos Barrage. Should total somewhere around 544 damage at 122 damage per bolt. That is followed by Mirror Strike if there is only one target. If you have multiple targets, your Mirror Strike damage is going to get divided between all of the targets, but if you have one target, you can deal 495 damage to a single target. Last but not least, we have Crimson Beam coming in at 461 damage total, and that deals 66 damage a tick. So you need to keep the target inside of that beam at all times. All of these ultimates are a little iffy when it comes to the high damage ones, because it involves you either focusing on the target, keeping a beam on them, hitting them with all of a bolt, or only having a single target. But your top 3 highest damage are the Chaos Barrage, Mirror Strike, and Crimson Beam. Now there is another one that does a large amount of damage, but it seems to be a little broken, and that is the Frost Vortex. So that one involves you keeping the target inside of the vortex for the entire duration. However, it would not do any tick damage to the behemoth when I was attacking it with that spell. It did the initial burst of 82, but it should follow up that with 66 damage per tick. It did not. I have no idea why, but if it did do the proper amount of damage, it should total around 478 damage. Also, the Fallen Angel can do a massive amount of damage, and it did a fair amount of damage to the Behemoth, coming in at 447. But that spell is really iffy and depends on the AI. The AI can get glitched out, it can get shut down, and so don't really count on it always doing that amount of damage. I had to cast it multiple times to get it to do that amount of damage. So let's take a look at this spreadsheet breakdown of these numbers here for all of these other spells. So you can see that Chaos Volley on a single bolt falls right in line with the damage of everything else that we're seeing. Spectral Assassin deals 102 damage when it hits something. Corpse Explosion, 102 damage when it hits something. What makes Chaos Volley super strong is that you get 2 bolts back to back, and it has that 56 damage on top of it that the target burns for. None of those other spells have anything like that. And sure, you can argue, well, those other spells have different types of utility. For example, Crystal Lance slows the target down because it chills it, and it does 123 damage, which is more than a single Corpse Explosion or Spectral Assassin hit. Spectral Assassin will reduce the amount of damage the target can put out, and Corpse Explosion and Pestilence and Purgatory and all those other ones apply a debuff to the target that increase the amount of damage the target takes. But even though that they do that, things like the Unstable Mosquito, if they get hit with back-to-back mosquitoes, the first one applying the debuff and the second one hitting it, still only equates to 110 damage, which is actually kind of sad. Now, they do an AoE explosion, which is kind of nice when you want to hit multiple targets, but that damage is just kind of sad compared to the damage you can put out to other single target things. So a quick explanation of this spreadsheet for those of you who may be confused by it. Where it says damage is the damage of a single bolt or a single hit spell. Where it says total is when that spell has the ability to do more damage or use multiple bolts. So for example, you can see Frostbat says 82 damage. That's 82 damage per bolt. The total is 164 damage. That's if you hit a target with both Frostbats because it has 2 charges. One that I do want to point out is that the Spectral Guardian there says 65 damage. It doesn't hit very often and gets shut down pretty easy. I didn't try to total it up. I cast this thing multiple times on the Behemoth, and out of every time that I cast it, it only hit 1 time. Every other time it got completely shut down and went away before it was able to get in another hit. So yeah, don't even rely on Spectral Guardian for any type of damage. If you're going to use that spell, you're using that spell for its shield. The Fallen Angel doesn't have an actual damage amount because it hits for varying amounts of damage. I just totaled up all of the damage that it did on its best run. So in conclusion, yes, Chaos Volley is a bit overtuned, but there's a very easy fix for it, and all they really need to do is to give it charges. Just give it 2 charges like Frostbat and Unstable Mosquito, and that's it. That's really all you would need to fix it, because it's going to slow down how fast you can cast it and put a bit of a gap in there, and that should bring it in balance with everything else. Because as you can see from all of the other data here, it's only OP if you land both of those bolts, which are fired extremely fast back to back. So we are going to wrap it up there. Let me know what y'all think about this data down in the comments section. Do you think the Chaos Volley is overtuned? Do you think they should nerf the damage on it or just give it charges? I'm interested to hear what you all have to say down in the comments. And of course, if you enjoyed this video, you know what to do. Hit the subscribe button, notification bell, all that good stuff so you can be notified when I upload other videos. I want to give an absolute massive shout out and thank you to my supporters on Patreon and my channel members for helping to keep these videos sponsor free. You all are absolutely amazing people. If you would like to join my Elite Crew Patreon supporters, please check out the link in the description below. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a comment down below. Let me know what you thought. If you're shy, you don't like to comment, just hit that thumbs up button and show your support. Until next time, thanks for watching.